So this interview is interview number 2 of my TIFF project this year, and I've got about 10 interviews booked currently with filmmakers and producers from around the world doing some pretty incredible things this year at the 40th anniversary of TIFF. So listen in. Jamie Dagg is a Canadian filmmaker, and he has worked on a film called River with a company called Apocalypse Laos Productions, which cracks me up. And for you film buffs out there, I hope that brought a smile to your face. This is a thriller, but it is a thriller with substance. And you know, there's, for me, a lot of the films I see at TIFF, I make the distinction between great film and important film. And I think River is both. Jamie has made a compelling, interesting, captivating film. I was pulled in right from the get-go. It has a feel of a Bourne edge. It's got a fugitive edge from a thriller perspective, but there's way more going on here than meets the eye. Watch carefully, look closer. I think you're going to enjoy the film. I know you're going to enjoy the interview. The first North American Laos production with a company in country, and photography is beautiful. I hope it's going to boost tourism to the country. And you know what? More importantly, this is a film about doing no harm. It's about contradiction and paradox and moral ambiguity. And you know what? You're going to love it as well. So buckle up. Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by another exciting guest here today. We've got a filmmaker, writer, Jamie Dagg, joining us today from Vancouver. Jamie, is that where
I'm in Toronto, yeah.
You're in Toronto. Oh,
Vancouver
okay.
number, yeah.
Vancouver number, okay. Well, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, David.
So Jamie and I are going to talk about a lot of things, and we're going to talk about his new film called River, world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival. And I'm going to let him tell you about it because it hasn't aired yet. And it's I was able to watch it just in the last couple of days. So first of all, Jamie, congratulations. Great film.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I got to tell you, one of the things that drew me to it was the Southeast Asian edge to it. The fact that this is, and we got to talk about this too. This is the first North American Laotian production. So the film was all filmed in Laos and Thailand. Is that right?
It was, yeah. The majority was filmed in Laos, in and around Laos, and we did shoot some stuff in Bangkok, and a couple of days here in Toronto, just like pickup stuff. But yeah, the majority was shot in Laos.
I guess so many questions just about that on its own. Having spent so much time in Southeast Asia and Cambodia in particular, I've stood on the edge of the Laotian border. You must have had some pretty crazy challenges, and you probably got some pretty great stories.
Yeah. It's hard to pick one out of those.
I bet.
It was many months of chaos.
Any stories involving large bribes and large quantities of alcohol? That's what we need to know.
There was a lot of alcohol involved. The bribes, yeah, there was a lot of. We had to. We had a Lao producers, a company called Lao Art Media. And they had to grease some people.
I bet.
to accommodate, visa requests and all that. They created a whole new visa class for us, essentially because of the amount of time that we needed to be in there and not really fitting into, a business class visa or or like tourist class. So yeah, there was quite a. I don't know half of it.
Yeah. Oh, I bet there was a lot. Probably a lot you didn't see.
A lot of conversations in Lao that I have no idea what was being said. One time we were shut down. Like we had the support of the government to shoot the film there.
Okay.
But they did shut us down. A new chief was just appointed, and she wanted to, I guess, flex a muscle. We're doing this chase scene outside of this market, and we had
Was
traffic.
that the fruit market scene?
Yeah. Right after that, when he exits and he's running down that road, and all the motorcycles are coming by and all that sort of stuff, and we had quads and motorcycles with cameras, flying by trying to capture the scene and closing off traffic. And I guess we held up traffic a little bit too long, and she said, I can't swear on here, can I?
It's okay, you can, go ahead.
Yeah, she said, fuck this, and next thing we know, like a couple trucks full of dudes with guns show up, and
oh man,
they shut us down, and it was very, very tense hours. They corralled us all into this area of the market, our entire crew, and as the minutes start turning into hours, and everyone's starting to get panicky now, and there's more people showing up, and our Laotian producers are trying to reason with them. They're trying to get in touch with the Ministry of Security and all sorts of
Right. Yes.
And we were sitting there, and the worry was that they were going to confiscate our footage. So my camera operator, who's this crazy, lovely human being named Richie Moore, who's an American, but he's been living in Thailand for 15 years and speaks Lao and Thai and everything. And we decided we got to get out of here. So we snuck out. We took off and grabbed a motorcycle with all the footage and whipped across the city so we could back it up in the event that they come. And there was worried that they're going to come to storm our hotel room.
Yeah. Oh man.
Everything. It was that moment. We were. Yeah. It was a little unsettling.
A little tense.
The thing is, though, because again we did have the support of the government, that they eventually got it, and I've got a copy of the letter in Laos from the Minister of Security for the country, and essentially telling this chief and any other person that tries to stop us from shooting that there will be all sorts of dire ramifications.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
If they interfere with these people,
Yeah, bamboo shoots up your fingernails if you guys don't comply.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, no, I've seen some of those letters. Having worked in Cambodia for so many years, you start to there's a governmental culture, there's subculture, there's an edge. If the government's on your side, you've got the voice of God, right? This is typically anyway. That's sort of how it plays out. So TIFF is calling it, quote, one of the most energetic thrillers produced this year, close quote. How do you? It's big. It's huge, right? It's amazing. And I got to tell you, I'm getting a little bit of a shiver having just watched it recently. And I think part of it is because I kind of felt like I was there, which I think is
That's so good to hear.
Oh, listen,
that's what we want.
Well, and listen, I'm now avoiding my own question because Sutherland's character, John Lake, is compelling. He hardly says anything in the film except swears quite a bit. And it's unbelievable, Jamie, how A, I resonated with him, B, how he's got an everyman quality about him in this film that is remarkable. And the humanity.
He's not Jason Bourne,
No, he's not.
He's not a Superman, Like you can see him when he's on the run, when he's a smoker as well, and
he smokes a lot for a doctor, I gotta say.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of doctors who work for the ICRC or MSF or whatever, a lot of them are smokers.
Yep.
I guess it's just the way that they deal with stress in these horrendous situations. They pollute themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that we made it was a conscious decision, which worked for him because he was a smoker. It was funny because I got notes back from his father's Donald Sutherland, and he went through, and I got a version of Final Draft where he went through and annotated it with a bunch of notes, and Donald's famous for being completely against smoking.
Oh,
and,
interesting.
And that was one of his comments, like, do not have this doctor smoke.
Funny.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
One of
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. No, I think one of the challenges of interviewing a writer and a director is I mean, we could talk about the film, obviously, and just the challenges and the technical side of it. But as a storyteller, the writer-director, I think you got way more insight into this guy than anyone else probably in the production, I would think. And so what I think really pulled me in was he hardly says anything. We know nothing about this guy's background, and yet I relate to him, and I like him, and I'm not really sure why, because he makes a couple of choices that I hope I wouldn't have made, but overall you kind of end up, I don't know, coming alongside and going, holy smokes there, guy, I think I would have acted probably the same way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's this there's this paradox.
There are ambiguities with his character.
Yeah, I love it.
And I mean, that was intentional. Like I didn't want to get too much, and we discussed it. Like once we had cast Rossif, and once he was on board, and it was really important that he embodies his character, and I wanted him to. I had no desire of just being a puppet master, for him. I wanted him to bring everything that he could to this character, and that included, like, we rewrote a lot of scenes featuring him, and so it had him in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not just my idea of what this character actually is, and you've got the benefit, and when you don't have like an ensemble cast, you've got the benefit to do that. And I think it really helps. It really helps with that character. That was one of the decisions that we made. Like, and I'd never had it written in there or anything, but we explored the idea of like, do we get more into his backstory? And I just said, no, it's not important. That he's sort of running from something. He's not interested in going back home. That sort of comes up in that conversation that he has with Dwamini in the vehicle when he's heading south after he's sent on leave. But yeah, it's not really that important. Which goes against a lot of conventions in the sense that you sort of sometimes you want that backstory, but I don't know.
There's it's interesting you bring up Jason Bourne, because I was trying to think of other films that kind of had that thriller-like edge of running, and there's lots, right? There's Fugitive comes to mind, or Run Lola Run.
Fugitive,
I suppose,
for sure. Yeah.
That type of edge, but I think there's a grittiness and a humanity to this guy that you actually there's a starker sense of realism, I guess, I suppose, and maybe that's because of the setting. I don't know, Well,
we pose these limitations on ourselves. Anything that he does has to be at least somewhat grounded in reality.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no jumping from building to building or anything like that. The limitations of what an average male his age would be able to endure.
Right. Sure.
And because you wanted that realism, you don't want to. I think the minute that extraordinary things start to happen, it sucks you out of it. It doesn't work in this context. It works for the Bourne films, but I really do enjoy those films, and they're definitely an influence to some degree on this film. And same thing with Fugitive as well, But it's different. We wanted it to feel real. We wanted anybody to watch this to feel like they're in that environment with him, suffering through this, with him.
Do you
feeling that indifference? What I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Do you go into a story like you said? You rewrote some of the scenes while you were there and shooting, and I'm sure a fair bit of that happens for any good director. But how much intention do you go in with? So you're writing. You've written this story. You have an idea. You probably even have ideas about casting, probably before you've even cast, etc. How much of it is kind of a project in the making, if you will?
The whole thing. I was writing, like we had a pickup day that I will try not to talk too much about the actual content of the film, because maybe no one has a point of reference for it. But
that's right.
We ended up shooting this one scene in Toronto, one of the only bigger dialogue scenes, and I was writing that. That was after we had finished shooting. I was writing it, still rewriting it 6 hours before we shot. It was like that through the entire film. We would shoot 10, 12, 14 hours a day, and then I'd go and spend another 2 to 3 hours at night or in the morning, depending on if we're on nights or days, and writing, like constantly revising. It's taxing. Sometimes it would have been nice to have like a writer just to deal with these things, so you can focus more on preparing for the stuff that you need to direct the following day.
Right.
But you just and Rossif was involved in not rewriting, but just like helping, like reworking dialogue, the limited dialogue that actually is in there with him and his characters, and so something that again feels like it's his own, And
Why? So, okay, so, I mean, the challenges of making a film, right out of the gate. You got funding, you got logistics, you got all these issues. And then you want to pick Laos? So help me out there. Why, why would you do that right out of the gate?
Well, I guess there's a couple different reasons. When I first wrote this, when I wrote the first draft of this, I just happened to be in. I guess there was a lot of went through a lot of personal stuff, and I was just traveling by myself, and I happened to be in Asia, and I just happened to be in Laos. I guess at the time I was sort of thinking about the idea of unintended consequences. Where you set out to do something that you think is good. You're doing the right thing, but there's a negative, unexpected outcome. And then how that relates to, all the decisions that we make, hundreds and hundreds of decisions that we make on a daily basis. And it needed to take place on an island. Right next door you've got Thailand, and the islands there are stunning. It's paradise. They're white beaches, beautiful water, and it's different in Laos. When the islands on the Mekong River, the Mekong's murky. There's mangroves, and it's still stunningly beautiful, but there's something claustrophobic and ominous almost about it. Excuse me. So that was one reason in Laos, and I wanted to. I wasn't interested in. I didn't want to remake like The Beach or something like that.
Right.
And I know at that point no one shot really anything in Laos, and the idea of going to a country like that hasn't been shot, overly shot. It's a completely, unless you've been there, it's a completely foreign environment. And like visually speaking,
sure.
And it's something that I found really appealing. No, it's not about having a trophy on my thing, like, I was the first person to shoot a North American to shoot a film in Laos. But there's something that, it was something very unique about it.
My background, I think, you mentioned it to you briefly before we hit record, but, background in development, I teach it at Humber College and been going to that part of the world for years. And so, kind of an academic when it comes to, how are we going to change the world in a better way?
Yeah.
How do we intentionally do it? So the whole idea behind it, though, Jamie, is about unintended consequences and actually trying to think some of those things through and say, okay, so good development says X, Y, and Z, and if we can try to do this, and if we can listen to the culture, and if we can actually go with an openness rather than, hey, we're these white Westerners who have it all sorted out, then things will pan out differently. But Mary Anderson wrote a book called Do No Harm, and it's all about aid and development in a conflict situation.
Interesting.
I couldn't help but think about that.
I wish I had this before.
Well, exactly. I go, you probably weren't thinking about this, but I see this, I could show this in my international development class and go, okay, guys, what did we learn, right? About what not to do, right? And yet, here's this guy, this is what I love about the contradiction and the paradox, not only of our humanity, but of, like you say, the decisions that we make. But here's this doctor who wants to change the world and ends up doing... Well, he does ultimately make some pretty profound decisions, right? And again, like you said, let's not give it away. But you got a lot going on in this movie. This is not just a thriller, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
A lot of it wasn't really intentional, though. It's
which might be the sign of brilliant writing, Jamie. Can I say that?
I don't know if I go that far, but
well, I might.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. Like I didn't want to be preachy about anything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I wanted to portray. I wanted to portray that world in hopefully a somewhat realistic light. You know what I mean? I wish I had actually I wish I had more time prior to shooting this to go and spend time in the field with MSF or ICRC or whatever. But then I sort of felt I know their resources are so limited, and to try and throw myself into that sort of stew, you know what I mean? It's just it's counterproductive, and it becomes. I think it's you need to have these people sort of focus on what they're doing, you know what I mean? Rather than, I did speak to a lot of trauma surgeons and people who have done that sort of work. But yeah, sorry, I digress here.
It's good. I think for me the takeaway is you go into a different culture, you got to be open, you got to listen, you got to go with open arms and be willing to be wrong. And I think for the most part, John Lake's character, I mean, I think this is a guy who is listening, who's trying to help and do the right thing, and then, like you said, ends up with some pretty terrifying unintended consequences as a result of some of the decisions that he makes in the heat of the moment. But got to come back to his humanity, Jamie. It's just, some of the simple little things, like reaching out to the young woman at the bar, smiling at the baby in the fruit market, little bits of business that go, I like him, I like this guy, I love this guy, but also just make you realize he was there for the right reasons. Does that make sense? Like that's what came through for me anyway.
You need that. You need those. You need to see his humanity. Otherwise, the audience has to be on board. Especially, I was trying to create a character, like a dynamic character. As I said earlier, like morally ambiguous character.
Sure. Yep.
We can tell this. We can talk about this part because I think it's important to the context of what we're talking about. Like, he kills that guy, and it's not I don't see it as being an accident. He kills him. He loses control.
Well, there's a rage there, right? That you
absolutely.
Go, where the heck did
simmering
that come
beneath
from?
the surface all throughout it. Even you can see his disposition towards the senior surgeon when you're in a situation like that where you've got a whole bunch of patients in a rural clinic, and you can't put the same standard of care into every single individual patient as you do back here.
Right.
And it's the greatest good for the greatest number.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a mantra that surgeons need to adhere and doctors need to adhere to in a situation like that. And he doesn't. It's like his own arrogance, you know what I mean? No, I can say this, I can say. And it's, yeah. So there is an arrogance there too, but what I was trying to say though is you still need, you need the audience to be on side with that character. And part of that comes with, Rossif. He's got his persona, like he is a likable sort of guy, you know what I mean? Like, the way he delivers, the way he speaks, but it's also those little moments, subtle little moments that are peppered throughout the film so that you do see his humanity. Because if you lose that, and the audience loses interest in John, then the film it's dead.
Okay, you kind of check out at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't help but laugh, because it's quite the scene. I mean, there's a tension, by the way, and I know you were going for this, but there's a tension in the film that's more than palpable. That's an understatement, and I think because I've found myself in a couple of those situations with the police,
really?
Can I see your passport? And it took me a couple of years to figure out that you carry a photocopy of your passport, and you don't give them your real passport. You give them
That's
the
right.
photocopy of your passport.
Or you carry your expired passport, which I always bring. I bring like 3 passports. I got my Australian passport, my Canadian passport, and I bring an old expired Canadian passport. And if anyone like traveling in Burma or anything like that, or Myanmar, anytime that you're stopped by the police or anything like that, you always give, or you're renting a motorcycle or something like that, you always give the expired passport. And they often don't look at the dates or anything. They're just throwing their weight around.
Well, it's a bit of a control thing, frankly. It's a power thing. Yeah, without a doubt.
I've been on bus. I'm sure you have as well. You're on a bus in the middle of the night and a bunch of armed dudes come on the bus and want to see all the foreigners' like passports. Not so much in Laos. This is more in Burma. But it's really
well, and I think that's what you've communicated so well. Is here's this Westerner who is completely now out of his element, and now what does he do? Right? And I think you have to ask the question. I think if you're an honest viewer, what would I be doing in this situation? This isn't just, I guess that's what I'm saying. It's not just a thriller. This is not just the Bourne films. To me, there's a level of there's a couple of levels that are working in tandem in this film that I found I found it really exciting, but also years ago I made the distinction between a great film and an important film. I think this is both. you know.
Wow,
and
thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously, like we could talk about colonialism coming you know, out of this. We could talk about gender justice. We could talk about this whole idea of doing
I know. Yeah,
you know, it's
but that's again, that never set out to. There was never an intentional thing. It was always about. It was always about thinking about a character. Like when I write, I don't ever think about themes or anything like that. Like I don't. That to me, that's counterintuitive. It's really about thinking about a character and thinking about a situation and putting that character in the situation, and they inform each other, and from that, you know, your themes come out and all that.
Well, absolutely, and
backwards, but
it's kind of backwards, but it's authorial intention, right? And that to me is the sign of a great. You know, sorry for laying it on too thick here, but the sign of a great story, great director, great writer. There, by the way, just so you know, there's also. We could do a couple classes in a modern existentialism course on this film. Like, you know, this whole idea, you know, John at one point, I think, John, isn't that horrible? The Laotian friend who comes alongside him.
Dwamini. We never mentioned his name in the film at all, so that's
okay, there you go. Beautiful man. I love this guy. And
that's him. That's Dwamini. He was one of our producers.
Oh, that's awesome. He's
like the voice of Lao. He used to do like their national radio programs and all that sort of stuff, and he's written a bunch of films. And
neat.
Him and his partner in the company, Lao Art Media, and his son Sirasekta, who is our executive producer from Lao. Like he went to, he's sort of like the godfather of post-revolutionary Lao cinema. Very, very.
Which is such a. Does he wear that? Does he have like a bumper sticker on the back of his?
Yeah, exactly. I'm the godfather of post-revolutionary Lao cinema.
Right. It's awesome.
But he was sent to Russia to learn film back in the 60s, and crazy. These, you know, like they have their ties to the government and stuff, and which is painful. As we were talking about earlier, you know, the Lao government, like they're authoritarian. Yeah, they're disgusting for the most part. Like the people that run the country are monsters, you know. But there's still people that are associated with the government and like underlings, whatever, that are truly like lovely people. That like the Department of Cinema, you know, these people love film. You know, when they try to, there's certain things that we had to censor, certain things we needed to cut out of the script and whatever to get their support to shoot there.
Right,
they don't want to do that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They're following orders, not in the same way that, you know, like Nazi Germany or anything like that, but like they're following orders, you know. But
they're trying to work. They're
different.
Yeah, they're trying to work within a framework. I think it comes back to your comment earlier about the greatest amount of good. I mean, you gotta baby steps, right? You gotta. They're
exactly. And
I mean, I can say with confidence, change is coming to that part of the world. But boy, it's going to take some time, right?
Well, the thing is, what's going to happen eventually, there will be some sort of I for whatever it's worth, and I'm not an expert or an academic when it comes to Southeast Asian affairs, but I think there eventually will be some sort of democracy in Laos. But what will happen is that in order for that to happen, all of the people that are running the country now will have sort of taken all the money in the country, so they'll still have the power. It'll just be a democracy, like just on the surface. You know what I mean? They'll still be able to do whatever the hell they want. Like I met this. There's an Italian guy, Gerardo, chef. And he's got 2 Italian restaurants. And he brought in like these Italian wood-fired pizza ovens and flour from Italy. But he's the sole person who is allowed to import Italian wine into Laos. And one night, you got, just so you can understand like the sort of squandering of wealth, one night he gets a call, and some minister, it's his son's, I don't know, 18th birthday, and he buys 3 $15,000 U.S. Bottles of wine.
What?
And this poor Gerardo, who's like a lover of everything, fine Italian culture, you know what I mean? And the Laotians, like, they'll just, it's all status, you know what I mean? They'll still put, they'll have a $15,000 bottle of wine, crack it open, and put ice in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he knows this is going to happen,
yeah.
and it torments him, you know.
Yeah.
That's the sort of, like, you know, that's it's horrible. We were talking earlier too about like there's all these Ferraris running around. A minister will buy a Ferrari. They'll work out some deal to sell like electricity to Thailand, and then Thailand will sell it back to them. He ends up making a cut on both ends. And next thing, as soon as the deal's announced, the next day he shows up in a yellow Ferrari. Like,
yeah, what do you do with that kind of stuff? At some point,
staggering. Like how do you even? Yeah.
So the question for me, the relationship between the two of them is really interesting. We only get a little bit of it at the beginning of the film, then we get a little bit more at the end. But they both at one point say they don't have choices.
That's right.
Right, face to face, and yet, to me, that's what this whole film's about. Right, is the fact that you do have choices, and that it's what makes you human, and it's the freedom, it's the choice, it's the responsibility, and this is the existentialism piece coming in.
That's right.
Here,
yeah.
Right. It is what makes us, I guess, less morally ambiguous. Right.
That's right. Yeah. That's his choice. Well, I don't want to talk about the end, but he finally makes that choice where he finally does the right thing and he redeems himself.
When you set out, did you say let's make sure we make this country look great, and we make the Laotian, and we're generous to the Laotian people? I remember seeing Clint Eastwood film years ago. Oh, come on, Tightrope, New Orleans, and at the end of it, I'm going, don't think I'm going to be going to New Orleans anytime too soon. I don't get that sense when I watch this film. Got beautiful country. I want to hang out with these people. But was that intentional?
I didn't want to portray. Like, I didn't want to reinforce all sorts of stereotypes about Laotians and the country's history. And it's hard to. Originally, it was set up. An early draft of this, it was set up as a backdrop of like a regional drug war, actually, because there's a lot of up in the Golden Triangle.
Sure.
There's a lot of yaba, which is like methamphetamine production, and the idea is the regional governments, just as a backdrop, regional governments were fighting against these narco gangs, and that's what set up the humanitarian crisis, which, that's what John was working on up there. They didn't want that. That was like, no, none of that. That was one of the first things they said we had to change immediately. And their suggested was the whole UXO thing.
Oh, I was just, so that's exactly where I went to. I wear these anti-UXO shirts from Cambodia. And over the last, I'd say for the last 5-6 years, I've seen they've sort of disappeared. And I've heard that part of it is a campaign to kind of, sweeten up the feel and look of the country, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, they definitely, it's still a problem in Laos, especially up in the eastern parts of the country, north in the eastern parts. But the Laotian government does, and it's not to diminish the serious harm that the Americans have done, but the Laotian government does play it up a little bit because they get more aid money in, all this sort of stuff. Yeah,
right, sure.
So it's not a black or white thing.
Yep.
But they wanted that because it just reinforces they like to remind the world that Laos is the most, on a per capita basis, most heavily bombed country in the history of warfare. The Americans dropped more bombs on Laos than they did on Nazi Germany. And so, they like to remind us of that over and over and over and over again.
Crazy stats when you know the size of the country. It's
horrifying. It's really, really horrifying.
Yeah, Cambodia.
But every year there's still people that are still being severely maimed and killed by these.
Absolutely. Well,
they wanted us to incorporate that into maybe it's a UXO thing, but I didn't want to. It's like every single film that people try to shoot in Laos, like this Australia film, The Rocket, and all that sort of stuff. Like this, the scene is just absurd. When they get into a truck and there's like these 500-pound, 1,000-pound full bomb intact.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they you don't find those every day. But they wanted that, and I didn't want to. That was one stereotypical. I wanted to do something in Laos that doesn't mention, the UXO situation or, and the drug, and again, it's hard to, I didn't want to incorporate any drugs into it either.
Right.
But it's done in such a way that it's almost like an afterthought. It doesn't really, doesn't play a real major part in the story. It's just.
I got to say, I did have a few memories come back to me of watching Broke Down Palace.
God, yeah,
years ago. That film terrified me. I remember that, and that was my pre-Southeast Asian sort of experience.
Yeah.
And I've now visited prisons in a couple of those countries, and let me tell you what, it's that you don't want to go.
You do
to jail.
not want to wind up in prison anywhere in Southeast Asia.
No, you really, really don't. Well, isn't it interesting that our conversation has gone, and I blame you, Jamie, for this, to UXOs. American involvement, and let's go back full circle to the whole notion of doing no harm, right? And unintended consequences. Holy smokes! I mean, you couldn't have picked a better place, from that perspective. Here we are. We're going to go in. We're going to start this bombing campaign. What was it called? Operation Breakfast. And we're going to go in. That's what they called it. And then we're going to start illegally bombing these countries because of X, Y, and Z. And we'll be out of there in a few months or years or whatever. And we're still seeing the effects of it today.
Yeah. And they had permission from the former, like the Lao king or whoever it was. But it was all about this paranoia of communism, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just watching a documentary. Did you ever see The Act of Killing?
Oh boy, yes. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Joshua as well.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Brilliant film. I mean, talk about a, compelling and disturbing doc, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, and this is a spoiler alert to anyone who's listening. If you haven't seen it, don't listen to this part here. But it's amazing when at the end, you finally, I'm thinking, it's up until 15 minutes before it ends, it's I don't see an ounce of humanity in any of these people.
Yeah, right.
And it's not until that old man, whose name escapes me, and you finally see it crack through. It's finally. It's this can't end without showing, there has to be something here that it's brilliant. It's just bizarre, and it's sad, and yeah, he did a really great. He did a follow-up to that as well, didn't he?
He did, yes. And
the Act of Remember, or was the
it's called it just came out actually. It was at Hot Docs in Toronto recently. It's called The Look of Silence.
The Look of Silence.
Yeah, and also you got to see it really again on a whole other level. So that guy you're talking about, he takes to visit the family of the people that he's killed, and so they meet.
What an amazing companion piece too.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And the guy's an optometrist who it's all under the pretense.
Does he talk to you about, not to get off topic here, but I'm just really interested.
Yeah.
I'm thinking his access to these people. How did all that come about?
Well, I think it was about a 7-year project, and what's remarkable to me is the trust that he was able to get access to over time.
Yeah.
But that's just living with and again, we're right back to this whole idea of doing no harm and listening and so on. But
I know.
He earned their trust and their respect over time. But what he found also really disturbing, and as you know, it comes out in the film, is that there was this hubris, this ego that these folks wanted to tell the world about what they'd done because there was a certain sense of pride.
They're wearing it on their
but what's interesting to me is it becomes less morally ambiguous the further you get into the film, and you start to see, like you say, you start to see the humanity bubbling to the surface, and you go, okay, so maybe these guys are human after all. They're not just from another world or something. Yeah. It's brilliant films. Well, listen, we're going to probably have to wrap up here in a couple of minutes, but I just want to say I congratulate you on the film for a whole lot of reasons.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And
it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, and I think you really I don't think the travel agencies in Laos should have any issues with your film. I think you've portrayed the people and the country incredibly well, and I hope they see a boon in their travel as a result of the film. Because honestly, it is a beautiful country, and it is a beautiful part of the world to go to.
It is stunning. Those karst mountains, if you ever have a chance when you're back, I don't know if you've ever been, go up to Luang Prabang sometime. It's a UN World Heritage Site, and it's old French colonial city, and it is just stunning. It's an incredible country.
Well, thanks again, Jamie, for joining us today. So just to be clear, when does the film open at TIFF? It's in a couple of days, I know that.
The world premiere is on the 15th.
The 15th.
September 15th, 7:45 p.m. at the Bloor Cinema. And there's another screening the 16th at Scotiabank. And then we're off to we've got our U.S. premiere. It's a Fantastic Fest in Austin.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's after that, yeah.
So I've got so many reasons why I will never forget your film or our conversation. I'm 50 on the 16th of September, just so you know. So you might want to write that down, Jamie.
Yeah, I will.
I'm 50.
So you're coming then, right?
I'm hoping to be there on the evening of the 15th, yes, to see the premiere. Yeah.
Well, yeah, please, I'd love to meet you.
So, folks, check it out. If you can't see it at TIFF, I'm sure it'll be a wide release soon. River, Jamie Dagg joined us here today. Thanks again, Jamie, for being with us.
Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure talking with you.